Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I have a very special and fun tutorial to share with you all today. What we're going to be doing is focusing on your digital audience, your daily active users, the users that interact with your online business daily. And what we're going to do today is we're going to calculate the percentage of your digital audience, or DAU, that logs in consecutively. But most importantly, what we're going to do is figure out the average number of consecutive days they've logged in. So as a business owner or someone supporting an online business, you'll want to know two things: the percentage of your audience that's logging in consecutively and the average number of consecutive login days. So in the demo business behind me, you can see that 40 to 45% of this business's daily active users log in consecutively. So the next question is, okay, we know a large percentage, nearly half, log in consecutively. How many average consecutive login days do they have? And in this example business, it's 6 days. So that's pretty impressive. These users on average are logging in, call it Monday through Saturday. So 6 consecutive days on average back to back. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to show you how to do this now in MySQL so that you nail down the technical chops to do this for your own business. So let's head over to MySQL now. Okay, so we're going to start with our customer logins table. It's just a table of logins per customer by customer ID. So I'll show you a few records in this table now. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the fields we need and only return the last 30 days of data. So we only need the customer ID field, and then the login date, and then based on today's date, which is December 19th, 2024, we want to grab the last 30 days. So we will say where login date is greater than or equal to date add current date interval. Okay, great. So what this is doing is it's figuring out what today's current date is, which is December 19, 2024, and then it's subtracting 30 days, so going 30 days into the past. And then we're grabbing login dates that are greater than today's date minus 30 days. So this will bring back the last 30 days of data. And let me show you that it worked. So let me just run a distinct up here. Okay, so it didn't quite bring back the last 30 days, it brought back the last 29 days, and that's because my database is not updated through yesterday, as it should be, but the day before yesterday. But anyway, this will always work if your database is updated through the prior day, which in most business scenarios it is. Okay, cool, so let's push forward. All we need is to bring the customer ID and login date field back in here. Okay, so we're seeing our customers and their login dates over the last 30 days. All right, we're getting somewhere. So now what we need to do is for each customer and each date, we need to return all login dates prior to each date. So again, we have a customer and a login date, and now per customer, per login date, we need to bring back all of the login dates previous to this value. And again, that's per record. And we need to do this because we need to see how many consecutive login dates this person has based off of their November 29, 2024 login date. Meaning we need to bring back all login dates prior to this value to see, hey, did they log in yesterday? Or yesterday as defined by this value. So meaning, did they log in November 28th, 27th, 26th, 25th? Or was the last time they logged in, many days prior to November 29th, maybe November 1st? So this is what we're gonna do now. So we're gonna call this subselect logins. We want to bring in logins, customer ID, logins, login date. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this subselect and we're going to join it back to this same table. This is what's called a self join, but we're going to do it in a left join. So a self join means we're joining back to the same table, and a left join is us joining and keeping all the records in the leftermost or first table or table A, which is our subselect. So again, this means that all the records before, during, and after the join are going to be preserved from this subselect. And then any matching records from table 2 will be brought across. Okay. So we're going to call this logins past, and we're going to join on logins.customer_id equals logins past.customer_id. And then we're going to do where logins past.customer.login date has to be less than this login date here. So what this is effectively going to do is per customer, per login date, bring all of the trailing or historical login dates based on this customer and login date value. Okay, so let's run a few records now. Let's make sure we do a little bit of date ordering. We can do something like this, right? I'm gonna sort this descendingly. Okay, great. So we have an example customer right here ending in 030. They logged in November 28, 2024, and then we brought in all of the previous or historical login dates that are less than November 28, 2024. And this is coming from this field here from our second table in our left join up there. So what we can see from here is this customer logged in on November 28, 2024, and the last time they logged in was November 13th. And then from November 13th, the last time they logged in was November 7th. And then from November 7th, the last time they logged in was November 3rd. And this going back to March 7th, 2024. So their entire login history that's less than this value right here, November 28th, 2024. Okay, so that's what's happening thanks to this join up here. Now, we're gonna do two things that are special with this. We're gonna do a date diff on the login date. So that'll be this value right here, November 28, 2024. And then the historical login date. We're just gonna call this day diff. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a row number over partition by. So per customer and login date, so this customer, this login date of November 28, 2024, we are going to add an index and order it by the historical login dates descendingly. I'm going to call this day index. So what we're going to do is with this data, we're going to add two new columns here. So we're going to go from 3 columns to 5 columns, and these two additional columns are going to be basically 2 indexes. And based on the values in those indexes, we'll know how long someone has been logging in consecutively before their consecutive login streak is broken. So this will all make sense with a few examples I'm going to show you now. So let's just run this, make sure that everything is working, at least on the technical side, and then I'll show you the exact logic that makes this work. Okay, great. So we see the addition of these two columns, and we see that there are values in these columns, which again are indexes starting from 1. So let's put this in a subselect. We can call it example. And I'm going to show you a few player or customer examples now, illustrating how this works. Go here. Now I saved 2 examples down here. We will start with the first one. And in this example, we have a customer that's been logging in for over 30 days consecutively. And what you'll see is that the values in both of these indexes remain the same, which is great. So we'll do where example.customer ID equals this value, and then we will say and example.login date is equal to this. And then we can just do a order by. Let's actually call this login date historical, just so that there's a difference. Okay. Okay, so this is pretty amazing. We have this customer ID ending in 88754. They logged in December 6, 2024. And then we brought back all of the trailing or historical login dates that are less than December 6, 2024. And again, as a recursor, that happened due to this left join right here, where the login date from table 2 is less than this login date. So less than December 6, 2024. Okay, fantastic. So as you can see, this customer is pretty unique. And this business is very lucky to have this customer because they logged in December 6th, they logged in December 5th, the day before December 6th. They also logged in December 4th, the 3rd, the 2nd, the 1st, November 30th, the 29th, 28th, 27th. They're highly engaged and have basically been logging in every day consecutively, day over day, for the last 33 days. That's pretty amazing. Now, I want to talk you through what is going on a technical level to allow us to aggregate and compute this analysis. So if you look at our two columns here, day diff and day index, you'll notice that their values are exactly the same. That guarantees that the person is logging in consecutively, right? Because the date difference between November 26th and December 6th, which is 10, is the exact same as the day index. Now, when these two values don't match is when the consecutive login streak has been broken. So what you'll see in the next example is, for example, if a day gets skipped, right, instead of from November 30th to November 29th, we see November 28th, then what you're going to see is the values in these indexes will no longer be matching. The day diff will be 8 and this day index will be 7. And that's how we know the consecutive login streak has been broken. So let's move on to our second customer example, and you'll see this with your own eyes. So this customer is logged in, I believe, 4 days consecutively before their login streak got broken. So let's see this. But most importantly, you'll see that the values in the two indexes stop matching the moment the consecutive login streak gets broken. Okay, so this is fantastic. This person logged in on November 29, 2024. They logged in the previous day or the prior day, November 28th. They logged in the 27th, the 26th, the 25th, and then you would hope they'd log in the 24th, but they don't. They break their consecutive login streak and they skip a day and log in on the 23rd. So what's happening with the values in our two indexes, right? You'll notice that while the consecutive login day streak is occurring, these values are the same. That's awesome, right? And then the day that your customer skips, you'll notice that the values in your indexes no longer match. So if you take this collectively, you'll know that a person is logging in consecutively if the values in these two indexes are matching. And as soon as they don't match, you'll know that their login streak has ended. And this sets us up perfectly for the next part of this process, which is to aggregate consecutive logins. So I'm going to change the subselect from example to ag, just so that it makes a little more sense. And then we're going to keep this login date. And then what we're going to do is this. Case when. So when this index matches this other index, then 1, else 0 end. And that's just going to be a summation of consecutive logins. And then these other fields we can just drop. We don't need them anymore. So we're going to group this. Let's run a few records to make sure our aggregation worked. Okay, great. So most people don't log in consecutively. Those that do, it's 1 or 2 days before their consecutive login streak is broken. But you can order this data. Here's a player who's logged in over the past 16 days consecutively. That's outstanding. So anyway, now that we have this, let's go ahead and create our final table. This. Can do something like this. Case when consecutive logins equals 0, then we're going to count these customer IDs. Do this. We will call it simply DAO without consecutive logins. And then we're going to do the opposite. Say if consecutive logins is greater than 0, then we're going to count the customers. And we're going to call this DAO with consecutive logins. And then we need a total of consecutive logins so that we can divide it over this value to get that average of, wow, okay, people are logging in, 6 days consecutively. So let's go ahead and do that. But there's one thing we need to do. These consecutive logins, if you remember, are only counting consecutive logins historically beginning with yesterday's date. So we also have to include this date as well in the final number. So we're going to do this. Call this consecutive logins. And then we're going to group this. And our work in MySQL is done. Let's go ahead and run this. Make sure everything works as intended. Okay, great. So we have our final data set. It is an aggregation of DAO with and without consecutive logins, along with a summation of total consecutive logins. So we're going to divide this fourth or final column here over DAO with consecutive logins to get that average. And as you can see, these login dates are over the past 30 days. So let's go ahead and get this visualized in Excel. Okay, so here we are. We have our dates, our DAO with and without logins, and then the consecutive login days. So our total or summation. So I created these extra columns here, which is %DAO login consecutively. So that's just going to be DAO with consecutive logins divided by the summation of these two columns. And then the average number of consecutive logins, which is hovering around 5 or 6. So it's going to be the summation of consecutive login days divided by the DAO with consecutive logins. So now that we have that, let's visualize it in a chart. Let me change the values on the axes here, just so that this data looks a little more stable. Okay, great. So we have everything charted. So if you look at the blue area in our chart, that's just a representation of the percentage of your digital audience that logs in consecutively. So you have about 40% of your users logging in consecutively. That's pretty good. But the big question is, okay, how many consecutive days are they logging in on average? Well, we now know that it's around 6. And that's due to the technical advantages of us creating those two columns and those two column indexes in MySQL, which really helped us aggregate this information and make it readily available in analysis for your business. Anyway, I hope I helped with this tutorial and have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.